So, I mean, first of all, thank you very much, Marco, for joining us. We're really looking forward to having you at Cannabis Europa. And really looking forward to the event that you've got coming up next week, which hopefully we'll dig into in the course of this interview. If you wouldn't mind starting by just giving us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do over at the UNCTAD.
Okay, so thank you, for the opportunity to exchange with you and also to talk about the forthcoming events next week. UNCTAD, it's not necessarily a well-known agency. Actually, it's part of the UN Secretariat, and it stands for UN Conference on Trade and Development. So what we're doing here is that we are essentially dealing with trade and development related issues. And personally, I'm a research economist, specialized mostly in international trade, but also to some extent labor markets, etc. And what I've been doing so far is looking at different issues, trade issues, but also trade policy issues. So in terms of market access conditions. And more recently, I joined the commodities branch, which is dealing, as its name clearly indicates, with commodities. And we have a series there called Commodity at a Glance. And this series, the objective of this series is to bring a bit attention to the large public, not only to policymakers, but also to any other type of readers, attention focus on some specific commodities. And that's why I came across hemp, because we've been realizing that perhaps there was kind of misconception about the plants. And in relation to the work I did before, it's simply that, this publication gives the opportunity to look at all aspects of specific commodities, not only the trade, but also the production, etc., and eventually how it could relate to development.
So over the last couple of years, hemp seems to have, certainly come to the forefront in more people's minds, and there's been a number of pretty significant developments. At the end of 2021, we saw the THC levels of on field rise from 0.2 to 0.3%, which was hailed by the industry as a really significant step forward. We've also seen similar developments in the USA and Latin America. I wonder if you think these are signs that the world is now kind of waking up to the potential of hemp.
Clearly, these are encouraging steps toward rehabilitation of the plant, because the plant has been around almost forever. It was almost born with humankind. Hemp is by definition a weed, so there's nothing, no human transformation at its origins, no real human interest. And the recent regulatory evolution show that we are trying to we are rediscovering all the potential and trying to do the best possible to unlock this potential. The road is still a bit. It's a long road to. There's a long road to go back, perhaps also to the knowledge that has been around for thousands of years and which have been lost to some extent due to the bad stigma that we imposed on the plant less than a century ago. So clearly, these are encouraging developments. Perhaps those developments came with not necessarily the intention to unlock the potential of the whole plant, but perhaps what happened since 2018, let's say, with the partial legalization of any type of cannabis plants in some of the US states. And also afterwards in Canada, perhaps there, the interest came because of the high value that could be captured by produce that could be captured thanks to the exploitation of the flowers. But it's only a small part actually of the plant, and the plant, all the parts of the plant can be used to some end products, in some end products which are not necessarily the one that we have in mind when we think of cannabis.
That's really interesting. I certainly want to come back to the kind of topic of using the whole plant a little bit later. But as we're on the thread of global regulations and their movements, while we've seen all this progress over the last couple of years, we've also seen countries, progressive countries like France and Germany, surprisingly, and Ireland, kind of take the opposite approach and still prosecute people for buying, selling, having hemp or CBD on their possession. So I wonder what your thoughts are on why you still think there's such a stigma around hemp, why people are still kind of unable to determine between THC and hemp, and what you believe are the most effective ways to start changing attitudes towards hemp.
Why the stigma is still around, it's like any type of prejudice. It takes time to remove it, and to remove it, you need a better understanding, a better knowledge of what you're stigmatizing, or where the prejudice is, and that's perhaps exactly what is happening right now. You've been mentioning the case of France, of Germany. France is moving now towards also a legalization of the trade, the commerce of flowers. That will happen. That is happening actually. As to Germany, they will move even a step further, in the sense that by 2024, I think, from what I understood, there might be a full legalization also of the recreational use, always, with some control and precise regulations about the users also of this type of products. But that is showing that there's an evolution, and perhaps there is an increasing understanding of all the plants, of the properties of the plants, and also there's an historical there's an history of production in France with the rest of the plants, not necessarily of the flowers. And with this regulatory move towards more tolerance, let's say, well, we will certainly be able to unlock again the potential that the plants represent. And I think, towards how to act towards, to provoke some change in behavior and perceptions. That's exactly also one of the objectives of the reports that we produce, and hopefully that will also be a small effect of next week event.
So on your report, which I believe was published late last year, obviously it covers a range of topics in a lot of detail. I wonder if you could sort of boil down the key points that you look at and the key recommendations that you make within the report.
Yes, perhaps I will start from the information and data gap that we came across whenever we started looking for information about hemp. There's quite a lot of effort to do there, especially if you look at trade statistics. The classification, for instance, does not consider hemp oil, which is an important product in the sector and highly traded, but it's almost impossible, if you look at international statistics, to trace this type of trade. You would get some information if you go to the national tariff schedules, so-called tariff schedules, so where the classification used to record trade flows. But still, it's quite scattered and not necessarily consistent across countries, because there is only one international classification used by all countries. But then countries are free to add any information whenever they collect themselves the trade flows. Whenever they record the trade flows. So that's one big conclusion, is that we know something about hemp, but not we do not have a clear idea of the full picture, even in terms of harvested areas. The estimates that we can find, the official ones, may not reflect the true harvested, the effectively harvested area that we have in various countries. So that's one conclusion, one message we want to point to with this report. The other one is the necessity to have a clear reflection about the regulatory approach to the plant, to make sure that its potential can be fully exploited by countries, and in particular developing countries. Hemp, as I mentioned before, is a seed, so it can grow in almost any conditions. There are some favored conditions for the plants, but with the multiplication of varieties, we are able to grow hemp even at very high altitudes. For instance, in Nepal, for instance, you have hemp varieties that can grow at more than 3,000 meters altitude, so it's quite significant. And so that's the second type of conclusions we can draw from the report. It's like we need, if countries are willing to exploit a bit of the potential of the plant, they would first need to think in terms of regulations and how to regulate, the sector. Also, because the type of regulations they will impose, and France is a good case, will affect the type of industrial strategy that can be put in place, and also how growers and processors will be able to react to these regulations, to adapt to the regulations. So that's the two main conclusions that we will draw from this report.
So to dig into these a little bit deeper, you mentioned the sort of vast data gap. I think in your report it says that the estimate is that the hemp industry is worth around 5 billion, but only about 42 million of that is currently tracked. So I wonder why it's you consider it so important to fill that data gap and make sure that the hemp industry is kind of tracked accurately. Is this a kind of effort to promote the economic viability of hemp and the opportunities with it?
That's one of the reasons. Perhaps the most important one is just really to understand. If you have to invest in some sector, you would like to know precisely what are the potentials. In terms of markets opportunity around the world. So if you do not get the right information, it's difficult to make any investment plan in some specific country. That's one of the reasons, and the perhaps another reasons related to the need of information is, that could also contribute to make the stigma disappear, in the sense that if we realize that trade, cannabis is not only about illegal trade, but it could also about trade in fiber or fiber-related products, or in oil, or in seeds, or in whatever that have nothing to do with the intoxicant use of the plant. Then that could also contribute to, to a better understanding and a better knowledge of what the plant could represent.
Could you tell us a little bit more about this kind of whole plant approach that you mentioned a little bit earlier on, and how this can create opportunities for perhaps deprived or rural areas around the world?
I mean, the idea of the whole plant approach is clearly not mine. Huh? That's something which has been discussed within the industry and also by various research institutes. I think the importance to promote this type of approach again has to do with the regulatory steps that governments could take. If you're considering only the fiber part, the stalk of the plants and perhaps even the roots are the part of the plants that you want to include in your industrial type of strategy, then well, you will certainly regulate against perhaps the commerce of flowers, and that will limit quite a lot the type of varieties you'll be able to grow in your country. While by adopting a whole plant approach, meaning that you also accept the fact that flowers can be valorized and can be used for industrial purposes, then that could allow also the use of a larger set of varieties and eventually allow growers and processors to adopt the variety that best suits the final use they have in mind. So the whole plant approach is more like a governmental approach to the sector, not to exclude any possibility in terms of the use of varieties.
And in terms of, encouraging the use of hemp throughout the world as a kind of economic opportunity, what role does its properties for carbon sequestration have for hemp? What role does it play in making sure the world adopts it as it should?
Okay, for the time being, I think we're still people are still investigating all the potentiality from that point of view. How many carbon can be actually sequestered by hemp plants? There are some estimates existing, so it's comparable to. I mean, there's the range for. We usually consider forest as the best carbon sinks, and estimates for hemp would lie in the middle of the range you would obtain for the different type of forest, different ages in different climate configurations. So hemp should be a good candidate also because the growing period is only from 4 to 6 months. Depending on the climatic conditions you're facing. So it's still under considerations. I have heard of some initiatives that could be taken here and there to use hemp to produce some carbon credits that could then be sold on some carbon markets whenever that's permitted. But I think we still have to fully exploit this possibility, even though the properties are well known.
And could you tell us a little bit about your upcoming workshop and the sort of ambitions and goals you have for that, which I believe is happening next week?
Yes, so it will be next Wednesday, so the 18th of January. The idea again is, I mean, we organized that as a follow-up of the publication of the special issues on industrial hemp we published at the end of last November. Again, the idea is really to broaden the view that people may have about hemp, especially policymakers. So we are expecting representatives of various missions and countries here, member states of the UN member states, to join us either in person or virtually, because the event will be will take an hybrid form. So it will be possible to attend, participate in the event wherever you are. And so again, it's like we want to broaden the view and provide policymakers with any informations that could be useful to them if their governments is intending to use perhaps hemp in one of their sustainable development strategies, because hemp could be put not necessarily at the very core of these strategies, but could certainly help to make this strategy successful, and the implementation can be facilitated also by the inclusion of hemp, by the development of an hemp sector in most countries. So it's essentially pedagogical, let's say, and we want to make sure that that the stigma that still exists could disappear relatively rapidly, at least amongst our member states.